We've had people who are down the middle. We've got people who left wing. We've got people who've got right wings. We've got now what I call a contrarian, a young man who will never say he'll be here if he doesn't want to be there. He's got an amazing mind, and I think he probably makes a great team man. Would you please welcome Tyler Lambert? Thank you, Lambert.
Thanks, Billy, for that introduction, and you're so right, I am a contrarian. I love disagreeing with people, it's my jam. Guys, just before I get on to any of the things that I'd like to talk about, just to everybody that's contributed to this series, just so well done. There's so much to think about in terms of how the world is developing around us, and I've just sort of been so inspired by everybody. So thank you all, and we'll get on with the business of talking now. As a toddler, that's sort of me as a toddler, I had a very simple idea of what I thought it was to be a grown-up, right? Grown-ups, they knew things I didn't know, and they did things that I was not allowed to do. So it's fair to say that this was my idea of being an adult. This, I think, is why I was so curious as a child. In fact, I think it's why all children are so curious. I think kids have got it in their minds that the more they learn, the more they know, the more they take in, the closer they become to sort of being big people, and the closer they get to, being able to do those things they aren't allowed to do. The paradox is that the thing you learn that really turns you into a grown-up is that, it's better to be a child, and that's just so ironic. But we need to ask ourselves, how do toddlers act on their curiosity, right? How do they find things out? And it's really simple. It's the same way we all do. They ask. We ask. We employ questions, and that is what I'd like to talk to you about today. When this question came up, what is 1 + 1, I was over the moon, because as it turns out, the answer is fairly easy to grasp, right? 1 + 1 makes 2, and I loved that because here was a question that I knew the answer to. I could answer definitively, I didn't need to ask anybody, and I knew that all the grown-ups knew this answer, and I thought they'd be so impressed with me, and as a result, I've never forgotten what 1 + 1 is, right? It's 2. But a thought occurred to me a while ago. I realized something that never in my life, and I'm not exaggerating, I mean it seriously, not once have I ever actually done the sum. Never worked out 1 + 1 for myself. The first time I learned it, somebody showed it to me, and after that I just knew. And then it sort of occurred to me, the only reason that I know what 1 + 1 is, the only reason I've always known that answer, is because I've always known that question. And this, I think, is how a lot of us think of a lot of questions and answers that we sort of come across. We conjoin them in our minds. We make them into two sides of the same coin. So in many ways, 1 + 1 and the answer 2 functions as exactly the same thing. And I think this is a flawed way of thinking about questions, because if we are going to think about questions like this in a broad sense, then when this dude, right, gets up in front of his class and says, "Kids, there are no bad questions," well, then he's right. Right? And you might think, that's not so bad, I can live with that, I've been told that. But think about what that means. Because if there are no bad questions, if it's not possible to ask a bad question, then how do you ask a good question? You can't, right? So when he gets up and he says, "Children, there are no bad questions," what he's saying is, kids, there is no need to evaluate the questions you have to ask. And I think that's more than flawed. I think that's fairly dangerous a thing to be teaching children. I think we should all be thinking about questions as completely independent of answers. And I think we should think this way because that really is how their relationship works, questions and answers. In linguistic terms, a question is simply an expression designed to elicit information, which is just another way of saying that a question is a function. It's functional, that's all it is. And its function is to take you to ideas and to information. And I'd like to encourage you to think of this function as a vehicle, right? Think of your vehicle. You get in it. Every day, it takes you to work. But unless you're a bus driver or a taxi driver, at no point does your vehicle become part of your job. Now, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think you can see what I'm thinking there. We need to keep questions completely independent, because only when we do that can we assess and think about the functionality of our questions. In other words, only when we do that can we start to think about how we employ questions to get us to the most valuable, most useful information. And that's all a good question is. A good question equals good, useful answers. Now, that really is just, it's like the golden ticket, right? It's the Willy Wonka thing. And like we're all going into the industry next year, into the marketing industry, and imagine we had that formula. How many of us would like that formula? Like how to perfectly ask good questions all the time. I'd love that. It would give me such an advantage, right? But unfortunately, and I'm sorry if I'm letting anybody down now, I don't have the formula. It's not with me. Like, I think about it, I've been thinking about it, I will keep thinking about it, but I'm not there. Well, hopefully you'll think about it as well. But I think I know somebody who may just be onto something, somebody who might just have made some progress on the subject, and that person, ironically, is this person, me as a toddler, but not just me as a toddler, all toddlers. I think these guys know how to get to the really good information, because think about it. Have you ever seen a toddler ask a question? No, you haven't, because toddlers don't ask single questions. A child won't ask a question and then move on with his life. He asks, or she asks, every question all at once. Anything they can possibly conceive, they will ask. And as annoying as that might be to those of us who have to deal with this child, think about what they're trying to do. All they're trying to achieve is to get to all the information that they possibly can. Because once they are there, they can just have a look around and say, well, that seems valuable, this seems like it could be something, I'm never going to use that, here's an idea we can run with. And in terms of asking questions, I don't think that's a bad strategy. In fact, I think it's a very good one. But the main reason I think children are such experts in the field of question asking is because they've realized, they've figured something out. They've realized that there's one question that works and functions fundamentally different to any other question and is just always relevant and always unique. Does anybody want to guess what that question is? Not you, Di, you know. Why? Precisely, why? Right? Kids have figured out that why is the master key of all questions. Why can take you to any piece of information because why does not have to stop. It can, but it doesn't have to. I mean, we all know toddlers, right? Mom, why don't we like the neighbors? Because they only come around when they need something. Why do they do that? Because they're lazy to go to the store. Why do they not want to go to the store? Because they're bad people. Why do we live next to bad people? And toddlers will keep on with this line of questioning until you become explicitly annoyed with them. And even then, all they want to ask you is, why are you annoyed? It is, I believe, one of the first intellectual discoveries that children make, that why has a capacity that no other question has. Infinity, right? As I said, they've worked out that why does not need to end, which means they understand that when you ask why, you're simply trying to understand a piece of information within the context of all the information that it is possible to know. And you don't have to be a toddler to work out that that just seems a whole lot more valuable. So I guess when it comes to toddlers, I think what I'm trying to say is that they've worked out, they realize, and they have realized way before it ever occurred to this guy, Simon Sinek, that when it comes to asking questions, it's a great idea to start with why. And so I'd like to leave you all with a challenge. You're all going into the industry next year. There might be some industry people in. I challenge you, get a toddler into your office. Show them what you do, tell them what you're trying to achieve, show them what you're about. And let's see what questions they have for you, because I'm willing to bet, right, that at least one of the questions that a child has to ask you about what we do in this industry will take you to some really, really valuable information. Thank you all.